Here is the updated value matrix, which I love, but I guess that makes sense because I built it, so of course I would love it. But I think this is a much better tool than I had for the value matrix before, which was really just a giant table that was kind of hard to read and hard to understand. So I tried to make it a little bit more visual. So what's going on here is I've loaded in all of the DraftKings pricing, DraftKings scoring, dating back to at least, here March of 2018, so almost full 2 years. And that will obviously continue to grow. And what you're seeing in this chart below is the golfer's average salary along with their average DraftKings value. So let me just pick a golfer so that I can explain what's going on here. So I'm going to go up to the search bar and I'm going to find Rory McIlroy. So Rory comes in, and if you hover over him, you'll be able to see average salary on DraftKings in 34 tournaments is $11,050. His average DraftKings points is 85.9, meaning his average value is 7.84. If you are not familiar with the value calculation, this is more notably done in other sports, basketball specifically, where your lineup tries to achieve a target value. Now, the way to calculate that is you take the golfer's salary, divide it by 1,000, and then divide their DraftKings points into that number. So, for example, if a golfer is $10,000 even, divide 10,000 by 1,000 and you get 10. And if that golfer scores 100 DraftKings points, you do 100 divided by 10, which is 10 times value is what he is returning to your lineup. So now that you know that, you can see Rory McIlroy recently has been awesome, by the way, returned 12 times his value on an $11,700 salary at the WGC HSBC Champions. That's his most recent tournament because he scored 140 and a half points. Really impressive stuff. What's a good number here? There are a lot of different theories on this, especially depending on the type of format that you are playing in. Cash games, the line to cash is going to be much lower. I've been telling people if you're scoring between 10 and 12 times value on your entire lineup, you're going to win a lot of money. That's going to give you between 500 and 600 fantasy points each week. Obviously, it depends on the type of scoring that we have each week, but that is a really good number to shoot for, especially 10 times value. Now, you'll notice that the cheaper guys will often have a higher value. So Rory doesn't necessarily need to get you 12 times value every week because he's so expensive. But if he gets you 8 to 10, he's really paying for himself. Someone who costs $7,000, he's going to have to do, much closer to like 10 times his value. But anyway, back to this tool. What this allows you to do is not only look at one golfer specifically, but compare golfers. So you can come in here and say, okay, well, like Webb Simpson returns nearly 9 times value over the course of his last 42 starts. So he is cheaper than someone like Jason Day, who generally costs more and returns less value, barely over 7. Bo Hoag, obviously a much smaller sample size, only 9 starts, but on average returns nearly 10.5 times his value at a $6,500 price tag. Now, what I like about this is a couple of things. You can adjust the time frame here. So if you only want to look at, hey, I want to look at more recent, I want to look at just, 2019, you'll see all of this information change and like Rory starts to, clear himself away from the rest of the field here. While yes, he is very expensive, he's generally the most expensive golfer. He's not that much more expensive than Brooks Koepka, than Dustin Johnson, even Justin Thomas at times, but significantly returns more value, 8.4 compared to Brooks's 7.2. That adds up over time, obviously. What I also like about this is you can just look at a specific salary range. So if I change this to 10,000, what this is doing is it's not saying give me the guys whose necessarily their average salary is over $10,000, but only give me the instances in which this golfer was over $10,000. And you'll see, like, here's Rory. Again, now we're down to 18 times that Rory was over $10,000, which is probably, almost every single time in this time frame. So maybe that's not a good example. But here's Webb Simpson. Here are the 5 times Webb Simpson was over $10,000, and you'll see it is generally the events where he's like the headliner. Okay, it's Wyndham, it's the Sony Open, it's the RSM Classic. It's places where he's probably one of the top 3 favorites in the field. And he's been really, really good at returning value in all of those situations, except for, that one Valspar in 2019 where he laid an egg and it looks like he missed the cut. But that is really good to know when you're trying to decide, hey, Webb's 10,000 this week. Should I even be considering it? Well, there you go. That's one way to look at it. Now, what I also like to do is I also like to kind of go down here and change these to like between 6,000 and 7,000 and see if I can find some really good value plays here. And because there's always a lot of guys here. And what you'll start to see is some guys separate themselves a little bit. Like here's Abraham Answer. Abraham Answer, I guess official World Golf rankings wise, probably better than a lot of these other guys in the field here. And you can see when he's been between $6,000 and $7,000, he generally smashes. I mean, he's capable of scoring 112 DraftKings points, 119 DraftKings points, even in the weeks that he didn't play as well. The PGA Championship, he only scored 59 points. Well, that's 9 times value on a $66 salary. So that's okay. So I like to click through some of these guys. Here's Kevin Kisner, the 4 times most recently that he was between $6,000 and $7,000. These are how I like to fill out my lineups, not necessarily week in and week out, but keeping an eye on the types of golfers that are generally returning value week over week. And like, for example, here, Charles Howell III. If the 4 times that he's been $7,000 or cheaper, it's been basically the majors. But he's someone that I bet you. I wonder if I can just extend this a little bit here. Yeah. He never really returns a whole lot of value. Because his upside is kind of limited, right? So even in his good weeks, he's, getting you 7, 8 times value. He's gotten over 10 and 11 a couple times, but those were no cut events. So he's going to score a lot more DraftKings points. He just lacks that winning upside at times, which it makes him difficult to roster in like GPPs when you're trying to win a large prize. So that is the way that I use this value matrix. It is a really good way to get a handle on, the 300 golfers that we see over the course of the summer months and all of that stuff over the course of a season. So I like to just kind of keep track of this, look in some different salary ranges, and see where the most value can be found.